So, Joseph,
Mm,
my working title for today is Messy Humans and Healing Hearts.
mm,
How's that
I
grab you?
like it.
All right.
Yeah, it grabs.
Okay.
Definitely grabs. Yeah.
So you
Mm.
are the behind the scenes person for One Voice Evolving podcasts, and you are my co-conspirator in creative efforts through any work that we do together. But it turns out we've started to work together on some 12-step work, which most people
Wow.
don't know that I even do. And the videos that you've put out are catching a little traction. So we thought we would take this moment to introduce you and your
Mm.
side hustle that has nothing to do with
Mm.
money and everything to do with heart. Tell us what you're doing, what led you into that, and where you think you're going.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. But this is it's awkward yet comfortable,
Yeah, right.
you know? And so thank you for actually having me on as a guest. And speaking about, I started to actually think about my own personal journey. And because I've been behind the scenes in your work of One Voice Evolving, right? Little did I know that because I listened to the entirety of every um, podcast, what the impact is from your guest and kind of the collective hum that comes through. And because you have been focusing on resilience, it actually came up, I think, in the middle of, at the end of season one, I think, you started to say, this resilience piece. So, of course, I start to think about it, hear your guests and the like. And I think resilience really is a mainstay to being messy, you know? And I thought for me, resilience isn't about toughness, just, grit and just get through it. For me, I've learned that resilience is about tenderness. It's about returning.
That.
And so I think that's why this recovery work, I'm we're not even in the first minute. Look.
Raw, real,
And
and relatable. Yes, you are.
well, there's just so many parallels. It's like, I mean, the root word, it's a Latin word of, resilience. It really is it means to leap back, right? And so it's kind of like resilience is that recoiling, right? Back, right? And it is the remembering
Oh, I like that.
for me,
Mhm.
right? And there's if I'm coiling back and I'm returning,
Yeah.
right? What is it I'm returning to?
Mhm.
And I think I'm sensing when I've gotten off some social media platforms, I'm on YouTube, so I get a lot of enough, definitely a lot of things that are happening out there. But there is this collective, I think, point where people are saying the ways of old, even this, fighting in this manner
Mhm.
brings us nothing except more of what we've collectively been fighting, all of these years. So, what is it that we bounce back to? What is it that I get to return to? And that's been my journey. And, I've learned in my life, and, that as a mask wearer,
Mhm.
and, learning that my identity early in life was shaped based upon my experiences, I've had to deconstruct and then reconstruct, these things that have happened so I can truly be at this moment to say, I am not what has happened to me, right?
Yeah.
And so, how can I shift this lens even 2 to 3 or 4 degrees, right? Just a slight
Mhm.
little change, because over time, it's going to take me to, right? And, rather than this massive epiphany
Mhm.
or, the whole, fighting energy.
Right.
I don't know if I'm making any
It's more
sense,
like
but
it's more like a course correction.
yes, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's returning, right? And I
Hmm.
think that's what's happening is that we, return. And I know that, in my corporate work, it was always about, what is your vision? Are these fancy words on a wall or on a piece of paper? And, what does this mean if we took it off the paper and put it inside here? What would
Hmm.
it look like?
Right.
Let's return, right? And
Yes.
so I've had to define for myself what am I returning to?
Hmm.
And, in whether it be self-development and spiritual conscious spaces, we hear the true self, right? The most authentic self. And it sounds so beautiful. And so, but it's like, what the F is that?
And we're so programmed. Yeah.
Right. And then, what I got was that, like, I am not my conditioned self. That's not
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
So I'm returning to,
Oof.
right, the pre-conditioned self, because that's truly my authentic self. And if I'm brave enough to look around the stories that I built along the way, to rightly so protect myself, to build a wall, to build a persona, to take a stance on something, to be right about things, all were ways that I continue to construct my persona in life, which turned out to be multiple personalities, you know, being a chameleon of sorts,
Yeah.
and so the reason why I'm here talking about the mess is because it's what I've avoided my entire life,
Okay.
right? It's crossing over into the places behind the curtain that I just, throw in between. It's like, oh, shoot, I don't want them to see that. It's on stage, but no one can see it.
Yeah.
When I pull the curtain back and then I turn around and going, oh, and there's only so much putting on I can do.
All right.
And so my life got unmanageable.
Mm-hmm.
And, so this discovery about the mess came, when a conversation actually that you and I had, and actually throughout when we first started to get to know each other, as you brought up this notion of a messy middle. I said, I've
Right.
never heard that before,
Yeah.
but it definitely resonated,
Uh-huh.
a lot, that it was a kind of permission to just the acknowledgement that, you know, healing, getting to a place of peace and harmony, the portal is mess,
Mm-hmm.
right? The portal is discomfort. It's not only looking at the things that I don't want to necessarily look at, but it is also the idea is that, oh my gosh, I'm a co-creator in everything that I have in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, the mess has shown me that that is exactly where love meets me, right? And so I wanted to, as I started to take off all the personas and just allow myself. You said it actually in one of our sessions. You goes, I've experienced many iterations of you.
Yes.
And the one that I see right now, I believe
Uh-huh.
it's Joseph.
Yes.
And that actually was such a nice reflection for me that you stuck with me through all my personas and iterations of who I am.
All right.
So, yeah, I mean, I brought Messi forward to give people permission, to be truly human, right? And not performative, but really presence is what brings us to the understanding of what we're looking for. So,
So when, as you were talking, I was thinking about mountaintop experiences and low and valleys, right? High highs and low lows. And we have been indoctrinated to think that God is the high high, and that's where we always have to try to get to. We have to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps to be perfect and better and closer to God and
mhm,
whatever that is. And that hell is the low low, and that's what we want to avoid at all costs. And because we're
right,
humans and we're wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain, we spend our lives in the messy middle, which you called the
right.
portal, which I love because
Mhm,
it is where transformation occurs. It is where God meets you. It is where two or more are gathered. And we spend
Absolutely.
our whole life in the messy middle with God, looking for something outside that to give us
Absolutely.
our mountaintop experience. We've all been to all the events or the transformative things or the speakers, and you spend your weekend and you sales meetings, and you're gung ho when you come out of there. And by Friday, you're,
Mhm.
at the bottom in the pit
Right.
and looking at all the stuff you're dragging because it doesn't,
Yeah.
because it takes so much energy to maintain the mask. And
Yeah.
I work with women over 40 specifically, but other people too, clearly. And but I do see that there is a life stage at which our energy for masking no longer serves us. Served us when
Yeah.
we were 20 and climbing the corporate ladder. Served us when
Sure.
we were 30 and being the image of perfect success for our families and our this and our that.
Hmm.
But there comes a point in time when we've sold so much of our soul to become
Mm.
the illusion of success
Yeah. Yeah.
that we really have to go, and it's costing me more than I'm willing to pay.
Right.
And they call
Yeah.
that a midlife crisis instead of just more of the portal. You're in the
Hmm.
portal. It is a workshop.
Yeah.
We're always
Yeah.
on our way.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I grew up in a religion that was performative. I mean, it really my view of God was like, I'm a bad person. I was born that way,
Uh-huh.
right? And the only way out of that is, through this process.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it inadvertently conditioned me that
Mhm.
this higher power, right, was all ruling and keeping score. And so it staves off if I can't go to a place of God, say, yeah, I'm hurting. And, I'm doing this regularly, and this is what's happening in my marriage. This thing's happening. I don't know what to do with it. Okay. Say 50 of these, 100 of these, da 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 da.
Mhm.
And, let's pray for you.
Mhm.
Take the demons out. No. And then,
Right?
right?
Yeah.
And then you walk around like, okay, so I guess it's supposed to happen at some point in time, right?
Mhm.
And do check the box and all the things we do, but there's no heart change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I do appreciate that experience now, of course,
Uh-huh.
because I have learned that it's all connected,
Mhm.
right? And that I swim a lot in that paradoxical, circle, because I
Mhm.
think those are some of the things that help me see the fuller picture, right? Just versus just my bias lens.
Mhm.
You know, could I sit in a place where I have compassion and the actual, like, what true love is in my mind, at least?
Yeah.
And there at the table was both the offender and the offended,
Mhm.
because there was something that happened, I think I want to say a year and a half ago, and there was a shooting or something in the East Coast. I want to say but I mean, yeah, in your neck of the woods, actually.
Uh-huh.
And it was a shooting at a school or what have you. There were a few casualties, and the the shooter, like, shamed, of course, and like kind of rightly so, and someone act like that.
Mhm.
Yet I had a sense of, those who were victims of this horrific act and decision by this other human being.
Mhm.
They were totally surrounded in support, of course, their families, etc., rightly so.
Right.
But there was still something in me going, wait a second, can I talk to the offended or the offender?
Right.
and just ask, like, have you been offended in your life?
Mhm.
Where have you been violated? What happened to you? Right? Not to make it right, but
Mhm.
for me, it isn't, it's that fullness of the, you know, that paradoxical, piece is that that offender
Mhm.
needs just as much love
Yeah. Mhm.
as the offended. And
Right.
that's not easy to get to. And how I've gotten there is the acceptance and the understanding, the understanding of who I am. And it's continuing to beautifully unfold that in my life.
Yeah.
And so there's this acceptance from my higher power because I cried out, Kim, one time and I said, God, like, let me see me
Oof.
as you see me. You know, not the idea of, let me see you, you know, people just take these phrases and just put them in a conversation. I'm the weird one that says,
Right.
let me see me
Oh my
as
God.
you see me. Because we don't see the label from inside the freaking bottle.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, he sees me in my mess
Yes.
and
Yes.
marvels in the humanity that I'm able to bring forth, knowing that this is both human and divine.
Mhm.
And it's there to shape me, to induce me, to bring me to this place where I am uncomfortable,
Mhm.
because that's where the sovereignty comes in, and that's where the freedom comes in to choose.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think that I used to get upset at myself that I'm making the wrong choice, but I had to make that wrong choice to get to the, choice that acts that led me to, you
Right.
know, this opening of freedom.
Mhm.
So I think about this whole kingdom, if I can take this kingdom idea,
Mhm.
how does it practically apply in this third dimensional world where when I offend someone or hurt another person, I'm really hurting myself
Mhm.
because we're connected.
Well, and
Right.
the way that you see the offender,
Hmm.
and can I just talk to them for a minute with
Yeah.
compassion and understanding, is the answer to that cry to God, let me see me the way you see me. Because that is. And Joseph, since the time I met you, your story today reminds me of the first time I met you, and you had a heart for the homeless I had never seen because of that very thing. So that God of your understanding has been weaving this golden thread in your life,
Mm,
your entire life. Human design, call it what you will. This is the hand of God. These are the fingerprints of God on your soul.
yeah.
I see it.
Well, well, the funny thing is, as you bring that up, I used to think, why am I so drawn to the unhoused,
Yeah.
right? Because I started even to see the importance for myself to say, you're just unhoused, and if my neighbor was unhoused, I'd take some form of action.
Right.
I don't know if I could come and save the day per se, or like, that's not mine to take on. But I
Right.
started to see the reflection, and when I just pass somebody by and not
Yes.
do anything, and I look at them and say, like, get your act together. But really what it is a reflection of my discomfort when I realize, like, I don't know how to help this person. I'm uncomfortable because, you know, they're not wearing the mask that I'm wearing.
Right. Right. Yeah. And survivor's guilt
So
is real.
yeah, yes, yeah. So that idea of, seeing me, that opened up that messy portal.
Yeah.
And, it was the real comfort of, this is where the authentic self is, not fully, but it's a part of me,
Mhm.
And so it's like, yeah, it brings like this peace, and I think that's what we all want.
The
It's to be in the
what's
midst of the storm, and because that, just really quickly, this thought just came because I think that's what resilience is. It's bending, but not breaking.
Yep.
I'm a Pacific Islander, right? So, I
Yep.
have to bring that up always. And so I do love those, tall palms, right? But you see
Yeah.
in the storm or anything, yes, they're swaying, they're going back and
Yeah.
forth and they're bending,
Mhm. Mhm.
but they don't break.
Mhm.
They bounce back to the light.
Joseph,
And
do you know
like,
that
yeah,
scripture about the effectual prayer of a fervent man, or is it the fervent prayer of an effectual man? Do you know the one I'm talking about? What is it?
yeah. hmm
And
It is the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much
there
or
you
something.
go.
Yeah.
When people are at a breaking point in their life and they can't do anything except cry out to God, which is what you described with your let me see you the way you let me see me the way you see me.
hmm
That that is as honest, raw, real, and relatable a prayer as anybody can do. And we always think we're not doing it right when we do it that way. But it changes your life in a moment for your lifetime.
Yeah.
It shifts you. Mine was, God, let me break my heart. Break my heart for the things that break your heart.
Mm,
I have never
right.
been quiet since. I
Mm,
have never
no.
stopped seeing and saying what I see since then. It's come out a lot of ways in a lot of forms, but it's that one intersection of my pain and his sovereign grace.
Mm,
And
yeah.
it shifts in a
hmm
moment and it shifts on a dime.
hmm
Doesn't, it takes a lifetime to get bottom, maybe, but once
Yeah.
you're there, the change happens in an instant. Can,
Yes. Yeah.
even if you don't
Yeah.
understand what just happened.
hmm Yeah. No, no, that's great. And oof, Kim, that was magic. I appreciate what you said about the offender.
Mhm.
Let me, God, let me see me as you see me. And it's such because it's um it's a mirror of humanity and what's happening in the world today is just, what's happening in here collectively.
Yeah.
I really believe that. And so, yeah, I think I've always thought grandioso, right? Build something, reach as many people as possible, right? And I can see that desire, um, and where it comes from. But what I'm realizing, in this time in my life is that it is my world, not the world, that I get to be who I say I am. I can go show it to everybody else because I'm good at putting on those faces and the speech and let me be prolific for a minute. So, oh, I like how he talks. I see those ways, and instead of shaming them, now I get to sanctify them, consecrate them for good. And yeah, it is this discovery that continues to be a gift that keeps on giving, this full acceptance of what is, as is, and it's taking a quote, a saying, a scripture, internalizing it and becoming it. So I definitely have seen that because I've allowed myself to be in the mess, which is sometimes just uncertainty. Sometimes it's just that discomfort knowing that I gotta face it finally.
Mhm.
And then the mess sometimes is like you try to exert your new self and you're met with, who do you think you are? with all this woo-woo stuff and healing stuff and love stuff, right? Come
Right.
on,
Yeah.
right? And knowing that, no, that was meant for me. It wasn't meant to continue to build my story of poor Joe. No, no, no. That was my Navy SEAL training to get to this point where not just I understand love, but I understand it more and more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get
And
it.
the work that you did with the just the red words, Jesus words, right? And
Yeah.
I was
Uh-huh.
just thinking about the part where when Jesus at 30 or 33 or whatever comes out for ministry and
Uh-huh.
people who knew him from his hometown were like,
Mhm.
isn't that the carpenter's son? Didn't he grow
Yeah.
up poor with no shoes? What did he think he is? What the hell?
Right.
You
He's a mess.
know? What a mess. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't deserve respect. He doesn't deserve attention. What is wrong with those people? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're in good
And
company. That old thing that used to scare me away was something my church said was if you want if you do what Jesus did, you're going to get what Jesus got.
oh,
And it always scared me away from anybody
um,
seeing that. But all I say to people now is, so be sure that you want what he had before you decide to make that commitment and ask for that. Be careful what you
right.
wish for, you know,
Yeah.
because what he had was perfect peace and ease into, through, and out of his death. Thank you. I think
Yeah.
I'll. You know,
Right.
it was some Christian writer 100 years ago that said, wrote a little parable about, I'll have $5 worth of God, please. I don't want enough to really change my life. I just want enough to be a little more comfortable. So I just want a
Mm,
little bag of God. I don't want the whole big enchilada. I'm not
right.
greedy. I'll just have enough that I can manage and control it
Mhm.
for my end goal. And
Yeah.
we're so the messy middle. We just want to be comfortable.
Yeah. And yes, I want to, it's this, what you just shared just sparked a thought about, this, a relationship built with, the God of one's understanding,
Mhm.
right? And so, I do see, Jesus as this, mystic and, just this soul. Of course, he just, he put a stamp on time. There isn't an ascended master who got anything on the calendar BC AD.
Oh, there
So,
you
right.
go.
So it's a little significant, right? It's like, okay, so my heart goes out to those who have unfortunately, have been the victims of religious,
Yeah.
activity and, experiences where anything to do with God, Jesus, etc. is just like, oh, please, and I totally get that. Yet, what I'm seeing now, Jesus as this from a mystical standpoint and taking his words in red as personal and they're metaphysical. How does it, intertwine on that? It is just, really opened these words in red.
Mhm.
They truly are my guide.
Mhm.
The examples, the beautiful stories and I mean, the parables and all these things. And the only thing that I call him the master because he mastered the divinity and the humanity.
Mhm.
He never talked about perfection,
Right. Right.
right? And all the things we're fighting about right now here on earth, he never bring any of that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
What he did was about love. And he said, someone, the greatest commandment is to love God
Mhm.
with all your heart, soul, and all your strength. And then he said the second is just like it. It's the same. It's to love others as yourself, your neighbor as yourself.
Mhm.
Everybody's heard that.
They have.
And it's like, well, I don't like my neighbor. So,
Right.
right? I say I love you, or I love you, wherever God is, to people.
Mhm.
But my life doesn't seem to bear the fruit.
Mhm.
in which I declare, this.
Right.
So the mess allows us to say, okay, God, whoever you are,
Yeah.
what you got? What's the purpose of the suffering?
Yeah.
What is it that you want me to learn? I keep doing every freaking thing that the church told me to do,
Mhm.
and this is what I get. Yeah, I'll just stay outside the church, thank you.
Mhm.
And that's a real experience for folks.
Right. Yeah.
But unfortunately, in some religious circles, it is like, ooh, the devil got you.
Yeah.
Right?
And now you're
No,
not part of us, so now you have to stay out there alone because you can't belong here
right,
anymore because you're not
right,
walking the walk that we
right.
say
It's
it.
yes, and exclusivity. And so, what
Mhm.
I really appreciate about my own journey is that when I left the church, I took Jesus with me. It's like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like,
Huh?
and
Yeah.
that's my mind relationship, you know, and then expanding my understanding of Jesus and the Christ with that, And so, in just that formula, Kim, right, if we took it just from a secular, general place of whatever your God of your understanding,
Mhm.
it is a higher power. It's a
Yes.
higher part of ourself. It's all encompassing. It's all knowing. Whatever you know, you understand it to be.
Mhm.
And so, I ask my friends, or when I'm in conversation, how do you have relation with this God of your understanding? What does that look like in your life? Because I'm starting to see how people discover it. And I'm like, good for you. Because I used to say, no, it's just a real funnel. You got to go through here. These are the steps. This is what you say, right? And then we'll know you're in the fold.
Right. Right. Yes. This is how you
Yeah.
dress. This is how you look. This is how
Yes.
you
Right.
behave. Yeah.
Oh, don't be expressive now. No, no, no. We don't do
No.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
And then your
Yeah.
children watch the double life you live. They watch the 2 hours you are on Sunday and the piece of work you are on Friday night or Sunday morning getting ready for church that you don't want to go to.
Right.
And they're
And
like,
so,
hypocrite.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I've had to balance is kind of my, hmm, shall I say, disdain
Mhm.
of people consciously and unconsciously using God, Jesus, as a shield for all of their personal, like agendas. It just like irks me. And now I get why tables were flipped in the temple. You know,
Right. Yeah.
don't hold up a Bible and then sell it and say
Mhm.
you're a man of God. And then all these people around you who are lauding it and say, oh, shoot, I should buy two.
Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't get the message. You didn't flip the table.
Right. I want the lecture on heaven. I don't want to actually do
Right.
the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's that type of tenacity about love that it
Mhm.
says, okay, this is what equates to justice. It's not necessarily speaking for the voiceless in my mind. It's about getting those voices and telling them you have a voice,
Mhm.
right? And I'm going to give you a platform to share it. So, I was putting together something that it says, no, let's hear from the divine nobodies, right? Those who have looked at their world, right? And has seen their world transform
Mhm.
because that energy continues to get collective. Because what we see, Kim, as you know, is when we hop onto any platform, we're going to see some things that are curated for us to see, and some people in between, like us, trying to get to them, like, don't believe it. you know, we and the people that we meet have some form of conditioning around that all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the resilience is returning,
Right.
remembering, for me at least, right? It is my world. They are a reflection of me, the offender, the offended, sitting at the same table. And just having those anchors helps me to practice what even that means.
Mhm.
But for me, what it means is, like just yielding for a moment to get into that space of listening, even when I want to slap you, Yeah. Even though I want to actually build a little voodoo doll right now. And but
Yeah.
that's yeah, I know that messy part of me, you
I have a
know.
question for you.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about that scripture about love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, and 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 back when I was in my 20s and I was a Mary Kay beauty consultant, they used the motto
Okay.
God first, family second, career third. You weren't even part of the equation, okay?
Mm,
So
yeah.
I knew nothing about the Bible, so I went, okay, God first, family second, career third. And so I didn't have much of a career because God and family took just about every second of my time. And I was the
Mm,
codependent, caregiving,
mm,
whatever, always accused of being selfish because other people's needs weren't always met by me. Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to learn to love yourself if you have not had a human, God with skin on in your life who loves you
Mm,
unconditionally.
mm,
And that's where the God concept comes from. So healing hearts, messy human, yes, we are. Healing hearts is when we see ourselves the way God sees us, which is that agape, unconditional
mhm,
love. When that moment comes where spirit shines a light of illumination so you can see for a glimpse, that's
yeah.
how we love ourselves. Then from the fruit, from the heart, the mouth speaks. From the fruit of that love is how ministry actually happens instead of from the checklist of the denomination.
Right.
How do you, how do you, so when you talk about resilience, I think about that serpent, don't tread on me. Because
Mhm,
in the rattlesnake coil is where the energy
mhm,
for the strike comes from.
mhm.
From the pulling back into all things
Mm.
quiet is where
Ooh,
the truth explodes.
yes.
It is we pull back to release
Right.
that.
Yeah.
How does a messy human navigate loving themselves in the face of people, circumstances, or things that keep that from us to keep us still small, safe, and quiet
Mm,
so that we
yeah.
don't challenge or threaten anything that is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's for me, I mean, in as it relates to messy,
Mhm.
I think it's I built this um I think my courage muscle. I mean, my I'm a pretty open man,
Mhm. Yeah.
and very very and transparent for the most,
Mhm.
you know. How do I navigate that is remembering it's not perfect, that's for sure.
Mhm.
And I remember when you and I first met and we were on the meditating gig and
Yes.
you come to these calls and Kim is all, yeah, I meditate for 2 hours. And it's like, okay, Kim. Like I like 2 minutes in. It's like right. But it's um um that's where I have found is the more answers come,
Yeah.
right? And many times it's a reminder of that, that it is in the quietness that I can hear the still small voice, right? Also just getting anchored and realizing that like the change that has happened in my life, especially recently as I've really focused in on love God all your heart and soul and strength and love others, right?
Mhm.
It really has. And because of that, it has strengthened how I see myself, right? And so, I think I had shared with you one time, I decided to do mirror work. And then I made it kind of my own. And I got
Uh-huh.
some guidance of how it happened. And it's like, okay, this is awkward.
Uh-huh.
And a piece of that mirror work was, of course, to see myself in the mirror.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you, but like I'll do, I don't see my face close up like most women who put makeup on and skincare and everything, And so actually, it was my girls who got me a mirror, round mirror with the light on. They said, "Well, if you like look at it closely." So I'm staring in this mirror, Kim, and I'm like, "Oh, you've been through a lot, Joseph. I can see it. I can see the stress in your skin. I can see the swelling in your eyes through stress and dealing with the things that you have through food and sugar is showing. You can't hide it. So how the fuck am I supposed to look in my eyes and say, I love you? So it was in the talking to myself and the edifying of myself and saying, you're so effing brave, dude. How did I get to have you in my life? Like, what happened that I got to, experience this misfit yet fitting in, this like overthinker and lover of all, imperfect human being, yet perfecting in your ways. And so I started to see myself like, whoa. And then behind those eyes, and I'm no, I'm blind in one eye, but even beyond the eyes, I saw the little boy. I said, there he is. There he is. This is what that is. Just
Yeah.
taking a look at, it's like, get out of there, come here. Well, embracing that part that a lot of men dare go to, you know,
Right.
these, tough MFs who are like,
Mhm.
talking about softness.
Right. Yeah.
So this work and looking in the mirror and seeing like, wow, look what God created. And you're shaming yourself for it. That's where I came to the point of the acceptance of this softness and this tenderness is both a gift and a target. So my own Navy SEAL training in love had to have moments on the opposite end for me to experience it as I am in this moment. And I will tell you that loving God with all your heart and soul and strength and your neighbor as yourself, good news for my neighbor right now.
Good news for Joseph too.
Oh, absolutely. That's
Yes.
why
Uh-huh.
I start to say, phew, I'm understanding what grace is, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's like, okay, this I get to practice it. It's just a practice.
Mhm.
And sometimes the practice is uncomfortable, but I got to practice it again.
Mhm.
So I say, God increase my capacity to love and all these beautiful poetic things. And next thing you know, here it is, the untapped resource,
Yeah.
that hasn't been tapped into. That deep love that's been given to you. Yeah, use that,
Right. Right.
right?
And when
Can you see?
Christ
Yeah,
and when
yeah.
Christ said, um, I was hungry and you fed me, I was
Mm,
naked and you
hmm.
clothed me, I was homeless and you gave me shelter.
Right.
When
Yes.
you looked in and behind the blindness and saw your little boy,
Yeah.
then
Mm, yeah.
that is
And then
Christ incarnate.
Well, if you think about that, if I looked beyond,
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
into the soul, that is the kingdom lens, you
Right.
know, it's like,
Mhm.
because I know, like, if I go to Asia, let's just say, Japan, for instance, right? I know what those citizens are. They're like, oh, they're like, these are the citizens of this kingdom,
Right.
right?
Yes.
You look at other countries and you kind of get, right? What
Mhm.
is the kingdom in which, as it is in heaven, bring it here?
Right.
What is that? What do the citizens look like?
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, Yeshua, that's what you meant. The question is in them. It just hasn't been discovered, activated, remembered. The same stuff that has clouded your understanding. Yeah, you know? And so it at least it gives me pause. If anything, in the midst of letting, the fervor out, all those, the pausing to say, as I speak to them, I'm speaking to me. And sometimes love tears off everything and speaks right between the eyes. Love doesn't sometimes, it's not all hearts, rainbows, and unicorns. Come on now. Right?
I know. I know. Well,
Right?
that wasn't nice. No, it was honest, but it might not have felt nice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, then I realized that um, you know, that's where the mess comes in sometimes, is because I get my own fervor going and I'm not necessarily in tune, in frequent with where another individual is. It's like, I have the answer. If you just did this and thought this way and did this, and rather than just holding them for maybe, even if it's figuratively,
Mhm.
and holding space to say, you're fine just the way you are right now in this moment.
Mhm. Why do you think we, and I'm going to say we, uh, I don't know whether it's this is a global phenomena or a national phenomena or what it is, but why do you think that we are so invested in outcomes, in productivity, in l- doing it right, looking good, whatever it is, instead
Mm,
of instead of that internal journey? Is that our capitalism? I mean, and because your solution in your life is only as good as your understanding of the problem. And I would
mm,
have to say that a lot of the times I have misunderstood the problem. If I have had
mm,
financial insecurity, what really wasn't about the paycheck. It was more about my lack of trust in provision in a God who provides, right?
mm.
And once
Right,
I understood that's where the problem was, then I could focus on a core issue solution that makes all those
right,
little fears fall away.
right. Yeah. I mean, actually, as you were speaking, Kim, right away, like the steps started to come into play,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, just think even collectively, thinking about it's like, oh my goodness, the collective part of step one,
Yeah. Yes.
powerless over, and we needed a higher power. You know what I mean? Is
Uh-huh.
unmanageable. It's really what's happening. So
Yep.
that's why the idea of it starts within,
Yeah.
right? It starts within because energy, many of us have an understanding, some of us have, reject the idea of it.
Mhm.
But we all know the power of energy,
Right.
right? And the frequency. So if I am in my own backyard versus looking over somebody else's going, what you growing over there? While
Yeah.
my weeds are over here just going out of whack, right? I
Right.
think that is the antidote right there.
Yeah.
Is to take a look at what I see in them and just for a moment, and to be effective and quiet in stillness, ask, where is that in me?
Yes.
either the rejection of it or how I actually have adopted it in my own way without even knowing it. Am I brave enough to look there?
Mhm.
For me, at least, that's where love has led me,
Right.
because what I know is that if I'll, there's a price that we pay many times to have the things that we want. And sometimes it's like being right is so important for many, but there's a cost to it.
Mhm.
And that cost of being right is disconnection.
Yeah.
Many times it is like
Mhm.
misunderstanding. I mean, it is, we're preventing everything over here because, we're standing in this place. And many times it's a place of pride. And that comes from the fall. I mean, that comes right before the fall,
Mhm.
and so you asked about capitalism. And, I would say, in my experience, in my own opinion, absolutely it feeds that like succinctly, about more is better, success is this, and then the lowlies down there. Well, shoot, if they really wanted it, they have the same things that I have inside of
Mhm.
them. I'm just flabbergasted, like, huh? and, like, and then it's, I just, how I am from a political standpoint, right? I say I'm politically homeless and, an independent.
Mhm.
And I will say that I purposely decided that because I was more left leaning
Mhm.
and really delved in. It was actually when I was going through my dark night. All I did was delve in politics. I never really had at that level,
Mhm.
and I think that kind of fed some of the things that I was going through personally. Right, so it's this collective. You see how collective now. What's happening inside of me is met with that energy and frequency within politics, right? Does now continue to feed, what I think about myself or, inside. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but that's why I started to say, okay, watch what I'm consuming to a degree, still stay informed.
Right.
And is it possible to stay neutral and still make a difference?
Mhm.
And then I said, I think it's good to have a neutral stance for the idea of being open.
Mhm.
But if I see injustice and I'm just like, well,
Yeah. I didn't
hello?
check my brains at the door for this one. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, am I preventing being labeled as left or right because I might say something?
Mhm.
Right. So and it goes back to me again.
Right.
Fear, right? Looking good club,
Yeah.
right? Oh, I don't want them to think about me in this way. Because as soon as I say those words, Kim, I don't want them to think,
Yes.
and before it says, I have just dishonored myself. And you told me, you said living messy means you are living unmasked. I'm like, bring the mask on, shoot. It's like, like, and then
Mhm.
there's times where I realize I'm wearing a mask, and in the middle, like that awareness, even in the conversation, I'm like, "Ooh, okay, hold on," and I see myself taking off and then course correcting that conversation. Like something just hit me right now.
Mhm. Yeah.
That is power right there, and that's what consciousness brings us.
And
So
resilience, practicing that consciousness
yes,
is what it is the practice that spring loads the resilience.
so like
Uh,
that
It is the practice that,
practice.
because I was thinking today about great concert pianists. Well, they
Mhm.
practice every
Yes,
day. No, they never stop.
yes,
They never stop.
yes.
The world class ones, right? And we want to do a one and done. I want to go to a weekend retreat, get my little nugget, go out
Oh
and
God,
be all have all the healing. It doesn't work that way.
yeah.
We get this thing. It's like the practice of medicine.
Hmm.
It is not an art. It is an ever learning, ever growing for every practitioner, because every person you encounter, every body you engage, you're going to learn more. You are, it's
Hmm.
another iteration of you. It
Yes.
is more will be revealed. Resilience is allowing more to be revealed instead of
Mm.
stopping in a comfort zone or
Right.
going back to a former belief because you were comfortable then, even though it doesn't fit anymore, rather than
Yeah.
continuing to stay
Hmm.
present in the present and let it change you.
Yes.
So change me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very. And I think this conversation has helped for me to remember is my inner world,
Mhm.
right? That really fosters, the kingdom in which I see it. So because it's through practice, repetition, right? I mean, if all of us think about what we're amazing at. We have muscle memory because we've done it so many times. And so when these situations come and, the former religious stuff is, what did I do to deserve this? You know,
Yeah.
now it comes is like, oh, practice. Okay.
Yeah.
And integrity with who I say I am.
Mhm. Right.
You know what I
Even
mean?
when
If
no
I
one's
say
looking.
exactly. And I think that's in terms of addiction,
Mhm.
and, this world is addicted.
Mhm.
And that's why to some form of addiction, dependency, etc. I see it in everyone, really, to
Mhm.
some extent. And the more I'm in this work, the more I'm
Right.
like, oh man, if you only knew, like it's not what you think, right? But uh-oh, I thought I put that away. But Kim, it's like finding these things, within. I can see how it's impacting my world and my relationships, especially family.
Mhm.
Those people who I didn't ask to I didn't, it's like, where does that show up in my relation to my siblings, my father, my cousins, my family? How am I within that space? Right.
Right.
And there's the practice, and it's probably the not the toughest, but maybe the toughest, because when
Mhm.
I'm out there, I don't know these folk. I can be, you know,
Mhm.
who I need to be to fight the good fight of
Right.
faith.
Mhm.
But when I come home, I still am in this ratchet place where all I want to do is just give me something to smoke, something to eat, something to relieve myself, or something just to get me escape for just a moment. Because I say it all day long, but I don't feel it.
Yeah.
Why? Is because I don't practice. That's all. I'm not a bad person. I didn't, this isn't, the karmic piece of it is here right now.
Mhm.
I've shown healing, and this is what healing looks like. A little messy,
Yes, it is.
right?
It is.
So, then the relationship with self starts to form. You know, I live with my 91-year-old father and my brother, we live here in San Diego, and um they hear me talking to myself all the time because I have a relationship with myself.
That's right. Yeah.
And then, I have the alter egos, that one that wants to, order Amazon. I'm like, okay, Hibuji, stop. Okay. You know, I think someone told me there was a recording artist named Shibuzi or Shibuzi or something like that. I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, I don't know who this person is, but it's like, oh, Kibuji, that's me. So in seeing these parts of me,
Mhm.
I get to have relationship
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
In a sense, is what is it that you need, And it's like, if all these voices and people, instead of the resistance, invite them in. It's like, take a seat. Sure, let me bring you some coffee, right? Because what do you have to say that I haven't heard before? And then they're
Right.
going to keep on doing it. Invite
Mhm.
them in,
Mhm. Yeah.
because once there's no one's talking back to them or ignoring, they will leave.
Mhm. Mhm. That's so true. All the inner voices are like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's passing through. Emotions are energy in motion. And if you leave it alone, it's like weather, it'll just pass through. But no, we want to
right.
grab it and massage it and figure it out. And then,
Oh,
we have a storm in our life.
and who do we give the mic to?
Oh. Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Because the voices are there, but then I thought I heard Grace back there
Right.
saying, but grace is sufficient. Trying to get through. Like, what?
I know, right? What?
But the but the voice of anger and the voice of that triggered me is speaking louder right now.
Yeah,
I'm not a bad person. I'm human.
right.
And so the practice comes in. It's like, I'm aware of it. I'm
Hmm.
triggered. They didn't trigger me. There's something in me that reacted to what they said. I've given it power that doesn't need to have power. What is it, Joseph? What is it?
Hmm.
Thanks
Yeah,
for the trigger,
yeah.
asshole. You know,
Yeah.
right?
But when you
And
change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
look at
Suddenly they
change.
are not
Yes.
your enemy anymore. And you're
Right.
not the enemy. We both are
Yes.
this human, messy middle who
Yeah.
is fully loved, completely forgiven, and embraced within God.
Mm, yeah.
Where
So
is the division? Yeah,
yeah, may I ask a question? I know we're coming up to our time together.
yeah.
How do you see kind of this discussion and resilience and what happened, with the work that you're continuing to unfold? Because it's expanding. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
witness to it, of course, because I'm behind the scenes, but I'm like, oh, this is getting fun.
Right.
I mean, and part of this, the trouble with 12 step, I think is such a genius way and it's an invitation
Hmm.
to say if you know it's okay it's okay to enter in, the water's safe. It's
Right.
actually a place that you're actually looking for, but if just for a moment, knowing that we're all programmed and conditioned by what people say and think,
Hmm.
you know step in. And I think that, I mean, I haven't been invited into that space with you.
Gee, I
And
thought
yeah.
you invited me into that space.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, maybe it was an unconscious way of,
It was that was it where two or more are gathered,
yeah.
and the Spirit said, I see you both.
Mm,
And here we are. So good segue though. Um, I Everything I do is steeped in 12 step in recovery, not the way it's understood in the meeting rooms with their slogans and their relapses and all of that, but in the way
right.
it was outlined originally in the big book by 100 men and women who agreed. But it is such a part of me. It is so central to who I am and so central to what God has done in my life and so central to how I found a God I can trust. Somebody
Mm,
said once, if you want to know what your relationship with God was like, look at your relationship with the people around you because they
mm,
are a direct reflection. If I don't
mm,
love God and love myself, then that love will not be reflected in my relationships. And so if I don't trust anybody, then I don't trust God and I don't trust me. And if I feel distant from everybody, then I feel distant from God and I feel distant from me. It is a
yeah.
reflection. But it's the reflection that people want to fix. Fix my husband. Fix
Hmm.
my self-demeaning ways, fix my addiction, fix my
Right,
symptom so I can get
right.
back to my comfortable, cozy life. And,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I stopped calling it the messy middle when it stopped being messy for me, when I learned to embrace the iterations that I used to
Yeah.
resist because they were uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Then I grew in understanding of God and recovery another level. So I've been doing this for over 40 years. I've taken more
Yeah.
inventories from more people and heard more crap than, most people will.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart every time. And I have healed the codependency so I don't pick up their problems. I can't care more than you do. I have good
Mm,
boundaries. And you and I both have we both have solid business background and success, and this
Hmm.
entrepreneurial spirit that knows how to make things pop and market and this and that. And to come to the idea of approaching the trouble with 12 step, which is controversial by the very statement in some circles, without monetizing it, without
Hmm.
making it a thing, without
Hmm.
setting ourselves up as the gurus or the heads or the chief cheese or the anything,
Hmm.
is particularly godlike.
Yeah.
And the work brings me so much joy. And I'm near in a retirement stage of my life that I need a little more joy and a little less drama. So we're
Yeah.
in, so we're
Yeah.
in. So you started recording these sessions that I do with you just for you, and then you started putting them on your Messy Human. Tell us where to see those and what you are this season, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I my YouTube channel is Joseph Atalig,
Mhm.
and I decided rather than changing my name all the time, it's just this is who I am, and my banner says "Messy Human."
Uh-huh.
And just like what you mentioned, you don't never not necessarily reference it because you're in the acceptance of what is.
Mhm.
It's not, it's that type of thing. So who knows? But what I decided to do was kind of to document a little of my journey, outside of the realm of performance and, being what I think I'm supposed to be, to practicing the discomfort of being fully Joseph,
Okay.
and I got, some adverse comments that came through. And then I let it, I felt it. I felt like embarrassed. Um, in my body, it didn't feel good. But I just let it be. I felt it. And then I thought, thank you. I thank the person who said it. Thanks for the practice.
Nice.
Oh, trust me, I wanted to go back and say, okay, you want to see a mess? Did you want to do that too, Kim?
Yeah, oh yeah. Here, let me hold this mirror up for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's good. I like that. Here's the mirror. Look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so in the practice, it's like, okay, am I stopping myself from saying what I want to say?
Mhm.
Or am I able to take this without reaction and let it sit to see what I get to make it to mean? Because the fact is, someone who I don't know made a comment. That's it. That's the fact. Based upon where I am in my own
Yeah.
place, and I'm going to see it. So we don't see things as they are. We
Mhm.
see things as we are. And in that moment, I was Christ centered.
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, I don't even know who the guy is. And
Right.
I, thanks for it. It was good to see
Mhm.
it. And
That's
then
what
every
practice.
single emotion that came out, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then, and letting the voices go out. Here's the mic, I had to get, and, and then coming back to like, shh, STFU, shut the up, right? be, be still for a little minute, Joseph, right? Grab the breath that you call the Holy Spirit. Let that bring the comfort that Jesus said he was going to send. And then sit there uncomfortable in your skin and feel what is meant for you to feel, to transmute, to transform, and to alchemize because you've practiced. You've practiced grace. You practice love. You practice putting your shoes in the shoes of the other. I said, I can't even walk these shoes. How am I degrading them?
Right.
And then just seeing it for what it is in the whole scheme of things. What does my kingdom look like? Am I caring for this kingdom? So it's gonna reflect how I see others and things. And if I don't, then I just go back to the kingdom. Not for I'm bad, but it is like, oh, unveil more. Help me see the things that are right in front of me, where the answers, right, are there in this situation, but the answer is within. Practice.
And when you practice, you become. When you read about it, you know about it. And we can
Mm,
tell everybody all the things we know because doesn't make us look good and important and wonderful. But when you practice any anything, then you
yeah.
know it intimately, inside out. And because what you're practicing is truth telling about Joseph, then what
Hmm.
comes out from that, and why I said I think I finally am seeing Joseph, not
Yeah.
some masked iteration, is
Yes.
because that kind of freedom, that authenticity is contagious. And it
Mm.
allows people, even if they're not in your physical space, in your digital virtual space, it gives them
Yeah.
permission to be messy and admit, even though I'm accomplished in 16 areas, this one thing I can't do for myself, I need help. That's everything. Because that one crisis cry to God will shift them. They just didn't know it was okay to be that needy.
Mm, mm.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow.
I think we'll just stop there. Is there
Yeah.
any parting thoughts, any last thing, anything we didn't touch, any resilient thread you want to pull through? And how do people reach you? How do they want to talk to you more?
Yeah. So I have, interesting enough, have decided to, exit the major social platforms. And it really has helped in terms of my energy. So I, can't find me there. So YouTube basically, is a place, and I'm thinking, is there any other way to get a hold of me? My email, I suppose, is I am Joseph Atalig at gmail.com. And I also on TikTok, under the Messy Human. I occasionally just, take a few things in there, but I'm really focused in on that. I started a Substack as well under the Messy Human, and I'm right in the middle of an article actually. And I think I was waiting because some content that came through, or some of that pieces of our conversation,
Yep.
I get to finish that article. So those are places that they can find me. And of course, they can always contact you because you know how to get a hold of me. But here's what I will say is that as we get to, join this a collaboration, so for those of you who have made it this far, it's like you are people, okay?
It's right. We can scare you away. It's good.
Right? You're those crazy, messy people. Um, we get to collaborate in a way that brings both our strengths and those things. There's a wonderful complement here that we didn't realize that we had. And, so for the cause, right, of advancing all, our collective voice, evolving, wow, we get to have our, our individuality per se. And then when we come together, there's a beautiful melding of when two or more come together. And I think that as you display the trouble with 12 step, right,
Mhm.
and walk me through that, I get to show people that in the mess is the things that I was avoiding was the answer. And so you just have a great way of, bringing that out through, through questions and through the ways that you're able to marry, the big book principles to what I'm going through. So I really want people to get some insight to that. It's helpful.
Yeah.
It's not that more than helpful, it's transformative. And I don't want to use that word lightly.
Mhm.
So join us, you guys. Of course, I'm over here kicking over here.
because he's my podcast producer. Yes.
You know where to find Kim, of course, but
Go ahead.
come visit me at my YouTube channel and check out a little of um, the heart that's coming through. And would love your feedback and the like, and let's just see where this takes us.
Right.
So
And
you'll
we'll be
find,
cross-posting here
yes, that's what I was going to say.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, cross posting in our
Mhm.
on our channels, because sharing the love,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for everything.
Thank you.